everyone, I'm Jess, and you are watching Discern with Jim Dennison. Today is Wednesday, November 3rd. Hi, Jim.
Hi, Jess. Glad to be on with you today.
Good to be with you on this Wednesday. Well, today we are going to be talking about yesterday's election that took place in Virginia, and our focus is going to be more on why this made national news, not so much on the results of the election. And so we're going to look at an article from the Washington Examiner. It says voters head to the polls in Virginia Tuesday to choose their next governor, and leaders from both parties are holding their collective breath to see who comes out on top in a race as close as any in recent memory. Republican Glenn Youngkin entered Election Day with a slight lead, edging out Democrat Terry McAuliffe by 1.7 points in the Real Clear Politics average of polling. But Virginia remains a solidly blue state, and no Republican has won a statewide contest there in more than a decade, giving the GOP reason for pessimism despite the clear momentum Youngkin amassed in the final weeks of the race. So, Jim, this election is in Virginia. Why is it making national news?
Yeah, it's a great question because you really would wonder that. Typically, gubernatorial races are interesting only in the state where they're happening, right? I happen to be talking to you from Texas. Why would I care so much who wins a race in Virginia necessarily? But there are really three things that are going on here that make this kind of a unique time. First of all, more and more people are seeing this as a referendum relative to President Biden's administration and its future in the midterms and even the elections in a couple of years. I even saw one source that said at the end of the day, this is a tacit contest between Trump and Biden, was how they were putting it. And so it's being seen in highly partisan ways, in a way that could make you think, if a Republican could win this race, what does this say about Republican chances at the midterms and on in the next presidential election? So that's part of it. Second, there are national issues that have been brought to bear here. Everything from abortion to critical race theory to school boards relative to parents and all the things inside that are being discussed nationally are being discussed in this race in a way that makes it national in terms of its import. And then third, we are living right now in a time of enormous political divisiveness that's resonating across the country. For instance, there was an article in the Wall Street Journal that describes 4 political parties, not 2. It would say that we have moderate Democrats, we have what's called progressive Democrats, we have what's been considered conservative or governing Republicans, and we have more populist Republicans. And those parties don't trust each other, really on any significant level. So there's enormous divisiveness in our politics these days. And when we see that reflected in a state race, we kind of see it where we are as well. And we're wanting to see if what happens there is going to happen where we are as well. So it's made it a national story in ways that, as you say, are not typically the case when governors are running in state elections.
Jim, I'm not going to lie. Gubernatorial is a funny word. So what can we as believers learn from this?
Really, I think of this on 2 levels. The first is to understand the degree to which one person can make an impact on the culture you might not expect that you could. We're talking right now about gubernatorial, to use your word, candidates in ways that make them personal in our lives. These days, you have the ability to change the world by virtue of where you are as you are. If you've got a cell phone, and any kind of a social feed, right? Then you can say things, do things, write things that people can see literally around the world. The world's gotten smaller as a result of technology, as a result of some of the issues that we're facing, that sort of thing. So never believe that your life can't make an enormous difference in the world. And that leads to the second point, and that is as Christians, let's make certain we pay the private price to be used publicly and effectively by God. The Holy Spirit needs holy vessels to use fully. And one of Satan's most insidious strategies, Jess, is to cause us to think that we can get away with private sins, with personal sins that nobody knows about in a way that doesn't really affect the rest of the world. Well, you cannot know, literally can't know, all the ministry that you could have had, all the difference you could have made if you had been more usable by the Spirit than you were. If these private sins hadn't been hindering the Spirit, grieving, quenching the Spirit in your life. Conversely, you can't know all the ways God would use your life if you were fully surrendered to a Spirit, if you were fully usable by a Spirit. Some of that may be in politics. I think God's calling more Christians in public service and are answering the call. And I really hope more Christians will be involved in public service. But whether you are or not, whether it's a local election or a statewide or a national election, there's somebody whose need you can meet right now. There's somebody you can pray for. There's somebody who needs a text from you or a call from you or your presence, who needs God's love demonstrated in your compassion. You can do that right now. So understand, you may never run for some public office, but you can be used by God to change eternity if you're willing to pay the price to be used by the Holy Spirit.
Something that I think too is interesting as I learned about local governments in college, I remember one of my professors once was like, it's really the local government and elections that have more of an impact on your day-to-day life, more so in some ways than the national US government does as a whole. And just as you were talking and as we've been processing this stuff, it also has made me think of in our own lives as humans and as believers, it's the little decisions we make or little that seem little or small that honestly over time pile up into bigger and bigger things. And so I don't know, I think it's just a great kind of metaphor for the way that we look at our lives and live our lives. And like you said, you know, things that we do in private that might seem small or that we think might not get blown up are important and they matter. And so I think that is a great way to end us today. That's all we have for you guys today. We will see you here tomorrow on Discern.